Hey, you're listening to Your Worst Song, and I'm Alex Southey. I don't actually know if people find this charming or if they prefer that I would do them in a nice sounding room or something. Not gonna happen. Uh, I am out on a walk just by a nice little pond, actually, and I thought that I would give artists going forward just a little bit more of an organized lead in, it's a preamble. So, if you've clicked on this, you know that the guest is Art Deco. Art was born in Ottawa, did most of their growing up in BC, in and around BC, Vancouver. Now I believe they're based in Victoria. I'd say their music is, art rock, glam, kind of inspired by. You'll see a lot of references to Bowie, maybe Iggy Pop of a certain era. I think maybe on the Wikipedia page it also says Sparks. I get it. I think in general, just sort of the glam, more theatrical side of art and folk rock is kind of where Art Deco operates. Very interestingly, they haven't revealed their birth name, so Art Deco it is what it is. That's what I'm calling them, art, and it makes for a really interesting conversation when we talk about persona, we talk about crafting music and how those two things interplay, career, BC. So, hope you enjoy it. This was a pretty fun one. All right. And if you like the podcast, give it a follow, tell your friends, suggest to me who I should have on. Thanks very much. I'm Alex Southey, and this is Your Worst Song.
Talk about whole fucking record.
Absolutely, exactly. Thank you. Okay, well, yeah. Why don't we get into it?
Sure.
It's great to have you on, Art. And we were just talking about this, before I now, looking back, have edited. So, listeners, this is the beginning of the conversation, essentially. But we were just talking about persona and even the way you introduced yourself. You said, my first name is Art, my real first name is Art. And then you said, and I go by Deco, right? So, I'm just curious if you want to talk a bit about how you're even able to successfully establish a persona or any remotely any kind of mystery about yourself in the 2020s age of information.
It's a great question.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me on, Alex. I appreciate it.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that I'm a little bit long in the tooth by the young indie rock standards. I just turned 41, so I've been around many, many moons, and I still kind of romanticize the pre-social media era of how things were done. And I mean, a stage name, a nom de plume, if you will, a pen name, like those are created to sort of sell or sort of like sell your story or tell your story and sort of be an extension of you know who you are and what your core values are as an artist. Um, I mean, to get like really inside baseball, my friend used to have this like wall on his house, and we would write. We're like in our early 20s, back when one would pull out a Sharpie and draw on the walls to piss off their landlord.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had this like door jam, I guess, that the door was removed and it entered like in and out of the kitchen. And on the wall, it started as a joke. It was like, oh, let's measure our heights as if we were like kids, and like how your parents would measure your height as you grew up.
Yeah.
And then that turned into like band names that we thought were cool or DJ names. And
Oh, that's cool.
someone named, I mean, I can't, some of them were like just so insane. I honestly couldn't even repeat them on this podcast, but someone had named me DJ Art Deco. And that kind of stuck, but it was spelt differently than the, architectural art
Yes.
pad. And then just adding, I've always been a fan of like, you know, bad syntax, I guess, or grammar, like apostrophes that don't go. Like still to
Yes.
this day, I honestly don't even know like where to put an apostrophe F or F apostrophe. Like if something ends with an S, like there's so many
Yeah.
rules of that. I definitely know there, and your. That drives me insane when people mess that up.
Oh yeah.
Um,
That's so funny about the apostrophe. I think it's if the person's name, let's say it's a surname, ends with S, and you're talking about the possessive of theirs. I don't think you add another apostrophe S, do you?
you're asking the wrong guy.
Okay.
um,
This is a grammar podcast,
yeah, the
okay?
grammar podcast. There's some
Yeah.
English teacher out there or English major, and they're
Major.
just like, yeah, rolling their eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the and then also like little d apostrophe big e, like it's
Hmm.
kind of like
I
there's
love that.
something. Thanks. There's something like aesthetic about it. I know that there's this book, I believe by an Italian author that bears a character of the same exact name, Art De Echo or De Echo. But I was
Hmm.
just like, no, let's just pronounce it Deco and spell it like totally butcher it. And around that same time, we played South by Southwest, and this band called Hers was playing, and they were like HER apostrophe S,
Oh.
and they ended up sadly passing away. RFP.
Oh,
It
that
was her.
band.
Yeah.
What that was the band that got into was it a road accident?
You know what? It was, and it happened right after South by Southwest, like the same year we let me
Wow.
play with them. I know,
Wow,
just to bring up the
geez.
macabre.
Yeah, yeah.
But I remember someone reviewing a bunch of bands. I guess it was like a fad. There were a few other examples of bands that were like, using cheeky
Playful.
apostrophes, playful
Yeah,
apostrophes. Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, it's like a superhero costume. Like no one wants to be their namesake that they were given at birth to like rock a stage and like put on costumes. So it's grown on me. Like I've even told my parents, like, I might actually legally change my name, because at this point it's like I sign checks. I have like
It's what you
business
answer
name,
to.
what I
Yeah,
answer to. Yeah. And
yeah.
it's like most people only know me by that. They're like, oh, you have a different last name? So I was just like, yeah, let's just go with it. And eventually I'll be probably legally Art Deco. I don't know.
That's an interesting thing you hinted at right there, which is, or what I'm curious about, which is, is your family annoyed or happy, or how do they feel about the idea, your parents especially, of you changing your name?
They're stoked. Now they
They're
can like,
stoked.
yeah, they can keep me. They can finally keep me um, uh, just past arm's length. No, I like my older sister. I have a sister who works in film and television, and she's like, there's a specific way that she wanted her name spelled. That's like a bit different than her birth name, and like,
So
I
it
think
runs in
in
the family. That's
yeah, and
very
like
interesting.
I think it's just like it's like totally acceptable. So, and it's just
Yeah.
a name. Like I have a friend who got married, um, and he didn't want. He's like, this whole tradition of like women taking the man's last name. It's just so antiquated. It's so unnecessary.
Right.
Like even cringier is like when you go Mrs. John Smith.
Yeah,
It's
of
like,
course.
yeah, like what are you, the possession of John Smith? It's just so ridiculous. So this friend of mine was like, we're gonna flip the script. Like we're gonna actually create a new last name,
Mm,
because she's estranged from her family. I'm estranged from my dad. Like our last names don't really, our surnames don't really mean anything to us. Why don't we
right.
create like an amalgamation, or like a new like they created literally like a show business stage name for their new couple.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah,
That's an example of good that literally probably couldn't have happened 50 years ago. That's a fun little silver lining of modernity.
yeah.
Um,
They've since
but
divorced too. I should say that.
oh well. Now they're estranged from each other.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
uh, we're just leading with the macabre. We're just gonna keep it in that. Uh,
Dark baby.
I am curious. So I don't even know if this is true, but I saw, I did a little bit of research in addition to just knowing you from your music. But So you were born in Ottawa, but you did most of your growing up in BC. Like, how early did you leave Ottawa? Do you have any memory at all?
Yeah, actually, so I was born. We moved around quite a bit. I have two sisters. My parents are actually still together after all these years. And
Mm-hmm.
at one point, my dad was like the breadwinner in the family. Mom stayed at home. We moved a few times within Ottawa, and then when I was 6, we like moved to Fairfield, Iowa. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, my parents are like really into like transcendental meditation, and there's like quite a community there. And there was also my dad was working in like he was like a financial planner, like door to door life insurance salesman, very 80s, like mutual funds. Would had like a little practice at you know, the um, the bank or whatever.
Yeah,
And
wow.
then he was like, "Oh well, this is an opportunity to like raise my kids on like this community where there's gonna be a bunch of like meditators, and it'll be like really hippy dippy." And there's also this new thing called like derivatives training. So he's like, "I'll get licensed. I'll work on like I think it's like some kind of exchange that was based in the Midwest there." We moved down there, and then I was like, we didn't have healthcare yet because the firm that my dad was gonna work for like went became insolvent, and so we were like kind of screwed up proverbial shit creek without a paddle. And I climbed a tree. I decided to climb a tree as kids do. And I got a rock, like a little rock, like stuck in my eye. And
Oh.
we had to go to emergency. Like, I had to wear an eye patch. I'm literally wearing an eye patch and I'm in kindergarten. I look like a little, like a Captain James Deco.
Yeah, it's like a
And
Wes Anderson character.
totally. And so the hospital bill was like obscene because it's,
Oh,
America, no insurance, all
yeah.
that.
Uh-huh.
And it was sort of like, this is just this is a sign. We're gonna go back to Ottawa. We went back to Ottawa, and within I think a few months, both of my mom and dads died. Like I lost both my grandparents
Right.
passed away. And
Wow.
so there was another kind of like crisis in the family. And my dad's like, "Hey," he pulled out the map one day and he sat us down. I'll never forget it. And it's like -30 out, it's like February,
Yeah.
Ottawa.
Yeah.
And he pulled out the map and he's like, "This is where we are." And he ran his finger all the way across the map of Canada to Victoria, BC. He's like, "This is where we're moving this summer." And, we burst out crying, like, "What about our friends?" But cut to the summer, and like the summer of 1990, I was like six, about to turn 7, and we pile in my dad and I in this big U-Haul moving truck, and then my sisters and my mom following us in this little shitty Ford Tempo like sedan, and we moved all the way across Canada. And my dad and I would listen to like golden oldies,
Uh-huh.
I remember I was obsessed with the song because they just play that shit on a loop, like all the way across Canada. It was like the same 100 songs, like Beach Boys and
Of
Love Me
course.
Do and all that. And there's this one song like Big Girls Don't Cry, and every time they go I'd burst out. I would lose it. I'd have like a little 6-year-old like laughing fit for like an hour. And my dad was just like, it was so wild. He's like, "I knew you were gonna be a musician."
Wow. It seems like there's a theatricality and showmanship to your family in general. Even your dad doing this whole thing of like, here's the map. This is where we're going. It's a lot more theatrical than just sitting your children down and going, we're moving. Sucks for you, you know?
As opposed to now, it'd be like a tablet.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the kids would be leading with the tablet.
Yeah, we
Uh
would be showing him on Google Maps the quickest way to get there and avoid all tolls.
exactly. So then when in Victoria do you begin?
My
Maybe
musical
not.
journey.
I guess I'm always wary of asking that because as warranted as it is, it feels a little rote to ask musicians at this point. Like I feel like everyone has mostly the same story of like picking up a guitar that was their brother's or their friends, whatever, and then they started whatever. I'm sure that's not the case for everybody, and I'm overdoing it. But I guess what I wanted to ask was when did you start taking it seriously?
Mm. Well, it kind of does tie into the story because
Sure.
in that move across Canada, there were records, and every time we moved, like I thought moving was cool because we would eat pizza on moving day, and we were like not, I wouldn't say poor, but we were like, we didn't have a lot of money. Like, you know,
Right.
pizza
But to
was
you, it
like,
was like, it wasn't moving day, it was pizza day. And oh, by the
yeah,
way, we're moving. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like 5 years old or 4 years old or 6 years old. Like, I'm not lifting shit. So I get to eat pizza and like, you know, walk around in my Ninja Turtles t-shirt, my gum boots on, and like just be like a little shithead. So I
Yeah.
was, we throughout these, like, the frequency of the moves meant there's always collateral damage, and usually the records, my parents had like a pretty decent record collection, you know, and I thought pulling out the vinyl was cool. I remember we
It
had
is
tape,
cool.
yeah, tape deck with cassettes. That was big. We had, like, you know, all the usuals, like late 80s stuff. But I
Hmm.
remember, like, by the time we landed in Victoria, we're living in Victoria, we're all settled in, there's this like box of vinyl records, and this is like, I would like distinctly recall like pulling them out one by one and like learning how to like drop the needle on it. And it was just every record that would be, I wish it was like, yeah, I heard Dark Side of the Moon, or like, you know, Bowie, like, you know, Ziggy Stardust, and I knew I wanted to, like, no, it
Yeah.
was like the only records that survived were like Beethoven, Mozart, Christmas albums. Like,
Hmm.
ironically, it was like all the stuff that a 6 year old would never want to listen to. But
No.
because I was so obsessed with the needle and the record in general, I would play like Moonlight Sonata over and over and over again.
Interesting.
And this, the third movement, like, everybody knows the famous Moonlight Sonata.
Yeah.
Like, pause the podcast right now, go to YouTube, listen to it, come back. But the
Yes.
third, there's a second movement and a third movement, but they get gradually faster. If you listen to the third movement of Moonlight Sonata, it'll blow your mind. It is some of the most, it's like shred city, like
Oh, wow.
little Ludwig von Beethoven, just like totally the equivalent to Van Halen masterclass of like tapping, but like on the
Okay.
piano. Yeah, I highly recommend you listen to it. It'll blow your mind. And so
I
that
absolutely want to listen to that.
totally fucking blew my mind. And I was like, my parents were like, okay, well, there's this like piano teacher. They must have pulled out the phone book and looked for him. And he's like, he'll teach the kids, you know, we just need to get like a shitty little Casio piano, and he'll come over and do lesson for all three of them for like an hour. And it'll be like easy babysitting for us. And so this piano teacher comes over, and I immediately was like, I want to learn how to play Moonlight Sonata. And he's like, well, okay, we got to like learn the basics here first. And so I was being so obsessed with wanting to learn that one song. He pulled my parents aside. He's like, okay, well, I can't really, this is beyond the scope of like what I'm capable of teaching him. But my teacher, this guy named George Essahas, he's he's the he's the OG. He's like the best teacher in town. He teaches out of this little basement in like this church out in Oak Bay. It's
Hmm.
my parents were like, well, how much is that going to cost? You know, it was literally $7 a lesson. Like, this was like
Wow.
1991, 92.
Yeah.
And so I started going to this George Essahas, and he was so avant-garde. He looked like Doc from the movie Back to the Future. Marty.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
like, I would come in there, he had three pianos. Basement was like really dank smelling. It smelled like mold and mothballs. He had all these
Sure.
paper clippings that looked like a serial killer, like Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill, but it was clippings of him from the last 50 years of like him just like accolades, rewards after reward, like awards, sorry. And he was like a really accomplished jazz cat and classical
Oh.
guy. I think he had perfect pitch. And
Oh.
so he pulled out a little, you know, chart notation thing. And he's like, we're going to learn the basics, and then no sight reading. Like, you're just going to remember chunks of the song, come back. You'll learn 30 seconds of the song at a time. And here's a cassette of me playing those 30 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So you listen to this cassette, and then you follow where the notes are, and you use your ears. And that's how you're going to learn the song. And within like 6 months, I knew how to play the song from memory.
Damn.
I was like 7 or 8 years old. So it's like
That's a great
that,
method of teaching.
totally, that
Yeah.
kind of started things. And I continued to see George for a few years at least. And then I think like on and off, like I took lessons and learned a bunch more. And, you know, we eventually got like an upright piano in our house. And at about like 12 or 13, you know, street hockey, and you know,
Hmm.
you start going through puberty, your mind starts wandering. You're like, what am I going to do? Be like a fucking pianist? You know, like I kind of started getting bored with it, you know. And
Yeah.
the as good as I had gotten, I was still not like like I could never learn the third movement of Moonlight Sonata, and that always
Okay.
depressed me.
Yeah.
So I eventually gave up, and then I didn't really get into playing guitar and like rock and roll until I was working in kitchens and restaurants like many years later, like I was a 16, 17, 18-year old.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah, you proved me wrong. That's a much more interesting story, I gotta say. And whenever they make the biopic of your life, the actor who gets to play George, that's a plum role, it sounds like. You know.
Yeah, I think
Uh
it's going to be by then, it'll be like Timothy Chalamet in a wig.
yeah, exactly.
He'll play
Uh
both me and George. It'll be his first.
both.
Yeah, it'll be his like I was gonna say his first Oscar, but by then he will have won many.
He probably will have. Are you interested in seeing the Bob Dylan biopic?
Yeah, I am interested. Um, I yeah, I'm a sucker for a good biopic, even though they always frustrate the hell out of me when they're about musicians.
Okay, why? I agree,
Because
but why?
okay, so it's the same thing. Like when like a sci-fi movie comes out, and like Neil deGrasse Tyson, the
Yes.
astrophysicist, he'll like start like calling out all the
Small
preposterous
inaccuracies.
totally and like this is so incongruent with science and the law of physics. You should have just talked to me. So
Yeah.
I wish they would have. So I'm kind of a little bit of him with like they didn't even have that microphone back then. They're like playing on like a Roland Jupiter in like the
Gotcha.
Ray Charles like 1968, and he's playing some instrument that hadn't even been invented for 10 years. Like that's an exaggeration, but little things like that annoy
Yes,
me. Or like when they start singing and then clearly it's like they're lip syncing to like a professional recording of it. Like just
that's tough.
yeah, it's a little bit. I mean, you're a musician. Like, what are your thoughts on biopics?
Uh, when they're done well, it's really exciting, but it's very rare. For the most part, I feel like there is this general track, like plot track, on which you can put nearly every musician, regardless of their genre, because they always kind of try and make it a rags to riches parable. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
we learned a lesson through this person's eventual success, but struggle to get there. And sometimes it's done well. One of the best biopics, in my opinion, is do you like Joy Division?
yeah, of course, yeah,
Have you seen Control?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
Control is amazing, but I think it's because it's an adaptation of the singer's wife's autobiography or something like that. So it's better source material. But anyway, my biggest issue actually with biopics is that they don't, I guess similar to you, my thing is accuracy, but it's more about their life. Like if they were degenerate drug abusers, devote significant time of the plot to that because inevitably their life was about that if they were addicted to heroin or something. It's crazy to me. I don't want it glorified, but I want it acknowledged in a way that isn't like Disney-fied. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. And the cool thing about Control, and correct me if I'm wrong, was like Anton Corbin, or is that how
Yeah,
you
it
pronounce his
is.
name? Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he like shot them on film back then, didn't he? Like,
Yes, it was on
yeah,
film. It's black and white. It's a gorgeous, more artsy take on a biopic.
yeah. And that's the thing. Okay, you nailed it. Artsy take on a biopic. Like, I didn't like cream my pants over the Rocket Man biopic, but at least I appreciated. Look, he's like a dandy. He's Elton. Like, how are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Like, if you really want to show the Elton biopic, much like the Queen one, like what Sacha Baron Cohen was saying, he's like, show the debauchery, show the '70s, show the
Exactly.
bacchanal, like crazy orgy, drug fueled. Like, there's a lot. Like, show an actual, authentic, unhinged version of like because people like gloss over it and they go wild sex parties and cocaine on the trays of dwarves and stuff. It's like,
Yes.
like that you only hear about it and you kind of laugh at how cartoonish and excessive and like the histrionics of it, the hedonism, how lecherous
Yes.
and unhinged it was. It's like that would be more interesting if you go all out. And in the absence of that, I like what they did in Rocket Man that they made it like really surreal.
I agree. Rocket Man was the only biopic that I can think of recently that's more in the traditional biopic sense that we're talking about, but was good. Like I thought it was actually Everything that people said about Bohemian Rhapsody, I thought deserved to be said about Rocket Man, but Rocket Man, unfortunately, due to how whatever it premiered, it was sort of in the shadow of Bohemian Rhapsody. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and I kind of you know what's another really good biopic is uh Love, and it's the one
oh,
on
Love and Mercy, the Beach Boys
yeah,
one. It's
that
really
was
good.
that was really really good. Yeah.
But again, it was a more creative take on it. Like they split the time between old and young, right? It was Paul Dano and
Yeah, Cusack.
John Cusack. Yeah, yeah. Both really good cast choices, I think, for him.
But yeah, and it shows like this sort of like the before and the after this like crazy thing that happened to him with the you know the what is that the where you get held hostage by someone you trust thinking you're ill.
It's the Britney Spears thing that happened. It was like a conservatorship or something, but it was his
Yeah,
therapist.
yeah, but it's like something syndrome, like Baron
Oh,
Munchausen
oh,
Munchausen syndrome. Like it's
yes, I've heard of that.
yeah, where you there's a famous case where like a mother will like groom their child through their own mental illness to convince them that they're sick all the time. They'll like shave their head, be like, "Oh, you've got, you can't grow hair," and for years. Anyways, that's kind of what happened with I think I get from the Love and Mercy movie. It's like he was told that he
Yes,
had all these, afflictions that were just bullshit, and he's getting
right.
drugged for them as if he had like schizophrenia and bipolar. What a poor guy. But like, I think showing the sort of before and after that with the two timelines was like a
Hmm.
brilliant way of like really showing the actual person buried in all that drama.
I thought
Brian
so too.
Wilson.
And speaking, yeah, Brian Wilson. And speaking of the singing thing you mentioned briefly, uh, I don't actually think the actor sung live, but it did seem like it was the actor singing in that movie,
Yeah,
like Paul Dano or whatever. And similarly, um, there are good things and bad things about Walk the Line, but it's cool that those actors were singing, you know.
yeah. What about Walk Hard?
Walk Hard is unfortunately for Walk the Line the better of the two. I
Yeah,
love Walk Hard. So Walk Hard was like acknowledged everything we just said about the biopic and made fun of it and ended up making a better biopic.
get
It's fantastic.
yeah, get out of here, Dewey. You don't want this
I
shit.
was just gonna quote that. It's so great.
Oh my
Okay, we're
god.
way off track. Not that I mind, but yeah, I want to get back to the persona thing. So you explained to me how you came up with the name, but how are you able to keep society at at arm's length or however much you decide? How are you able to conjure that uh power?
Well, I mean, um, the look of you look back to like trespasser era, which
Hmm.
feels so fucking long ago now. And it's approaching what is it? We're 2025. So Trespasser came out in like the fall of 2018. So it's been 7 years. But I was like working at this whole rock and roll persona, if you will,
Yes.
for like 5 years leading up to that. Like I released an album in 2016, self-released it. I didn't have a manager or a label or anything. I just had savings and I dumped it into making a record and I self-released it. And it's called Day Fevers. You can, I think the vinyl, there's still maybe like 100 copies of the original vinyl available. Like we saw it on my website. Like people that wanted nothing to do with that. In fact, like, can you remove this album from streaming so people think that, we signed you and this is Trespassers, your first album? Much
Yeah.
to the chagrin of my tens of fans who had
Yeah.
been loyal up to that date, but I digress. And so like I was already playing around with kind of like this idea of a persona, and much in the spirit of like a lot of my influences, which surprise, surprise, I wear on my sleeve. A lot of the glam rock and the art rock of
Yeah.
yesteryear was really informing my decisions. But then things changed, and then lockdown happened, and um, my ex, girlfriend at the time, she was like, you're like a cis het like dude in his like 30s, and you're like basically like queer baiting as this like glam rock half drag person, and like you're gonna really upset the community because you're not part of the community. And I'm like, no, I'm not. You're totally misinterpreting the art, man. And but I did a lot of self reflection, and then locked in the lockdown period while I was recording in standard definition, and then also after I rushed. I thought once this whole lockdown shit is over, and I'm back, baby. I and I'm able to play shows again. I wanna I wanna emerge like, she's right. I don't want to be in like a clown costume for the rest of my life. Like I've got to move past that. And so I did. And I came out of lockdown as a blonde, mulleted lesbian type person. No, I mean, I joke only because like people literally said I looked like um, Ellen DeGeneres meets 80s Wayne Gretzky, which is totally
Sure.
accurate. And
Both
then,
compliments. I mean, hey, any part of you being 80s Wayne Gretzky, that's
yeah,
it's a Canadian legend.
totally. I mean, he's like, you know, wearing the red MAGA hat, and Ellen's
Oh, is
been
he?
canceled for, whatever. But I thought it was funny. I mean, like, I'm a
Oh, I didn't know
self-deprecating
that.
guy. Yeah, this was like all really, really recent. But look, he's still the
Oh
great one in
shit.
our hearts. 80s
Okay,
Wayne
yeah.
Gretzky. Come on. Like, he is the greatest of all time.
He is.
But yeah, and then so I turned around as that, and I was doing this full maximalist, like 80s rock sound. And since then, I've gone on to record the album that I'm sort of promoting now, Serene Demon, and I've fully transitioned to human male art self, like the version you see me in the suits with the 1940s mushroom cut. Like that's me. Like that's always been me, sort of at the core of who I am. I feel like I'm come full around and being my most authentic self now. It's just taken like 10 years to get here.
That's so interesting. That's kind of what I was going to follow up with, which is what does everyday you look like? But you are saying you now just the our artist version of you looks very much like day-to-day you. Is that correct?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've become, in a roundabout way, in trying to find who I am, and
You
like,
found you.
and yeah, and hiding my look and changing my name and going through these different iterations. I've finally gotten to the core of who I am as a person, as a songwriter too. I feel like this is the most like real album I've ever put out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This one that you're promoting?
totally. Yeah, Serene Demon. Out Feb 14 on Paperback Records.
Yes. Yes. Awesome. I'm curious if that's great that you're so forthcoming about the appearance changes, but I'm curious why make that decision in the first place? Like why put on the bob and etc. Like was it just for artistic expression, just try something different?
It was a bit utilitarian, to be honest.
Okay.
I was living in a small town, a very private person, and I didn't want to be like, oh, that's the rock guy. Like I wanted to be anonymous, and
Uh-huh.
I wasn't quite sure. Like I was going back to school. I was gonna maybe, start applying for jobs in like, the real world, and get like a real like, desk job somewhere. And I was thinking like, oh, I turned my back on music when I was 30, and now here I am, just like that old Sopranos bit. Every time I try to leave, this suck me back in. And I was just like, through um, even longer tangents that we don't need to cover, but like I was now making music, like I said, self-released an album, and I was more determined than ever to make another album and like just chip away at this core of who I was underneath the veneer of wigs and makeup and varying degrees of androgyny. And so in this determination to make music, I was like, I'm going to hide who I am only because I kind of want to exist in this parallel universe. It's like a superhero costume. Like I want if people come across that name and see that look, they will have zero association with the regular art that they see day to day shopping at Thrifty and like hanging out at the pub. And so I wanted to kind of like be a little bit of a Clark Kent in a phone booth. I didn't know really what that would look like until one day I was getting my keys cut at the mall in Victoria, and I was playing a show. It was literally the second show I ever played, and at this bar that's no longer around called the Copper Electric Owl, Copper Owl. I was getting the
Okay.
two names mixed up. It was in Victoria. It was like June 2016. And I went to the mall to get my keys cut, and I'm waiting, and I'm looking off in the distance, just thinking about making sound check in a few hours. I see this wig store, this human hair like wig store, and there's like I walked in there and I was like, I want to wear that. I want that bob wig, and like they're legitimately selling these to like people who've had cancer and stuff. And here's this dude who wants to buy like a woman's wig, and it was
Right.
like it was not cheap. Like it's made with human hair. I think it was
Sure.
like $300 or $400, and so I bought it.
Damn.
And I'm like walking through the bay after on the way. I got my keys and my my newly cut keys and my wig, and I was like, let's just buy some makeup. Bought some makeup, and then showed up to the show, uh, like in a suit and tie, but with like goth white face, like I was Gary Newman or something,
Yeah.
and this wig, and my everybody's jaw dropped. Like, what the fuck are you doing? And it was like that reaction, that kind of like sort of like jarring
Yes.
juxtaposition, and that like I got a rise. It gave me it was exhilarating. It felt like transgressive. But again, here we are in 2025. It's a different era of that was I know it sounds silly, like I'm talking about it like as if it was like the 90s or the 80s or something, but this is like before a lot of you know identity politics and like the LGBT
Social
community,
change.
social change, and you've got to grow, and I just at that time this was before all that, and I was thought it was I was doing it on a lark, but I was also deep down inside it was like exhilarating. It made me feel like more connected to the music. I was stripping the masculinity out of this hand-fisted genre where it was just totally there was just a lot of like parody. Everybody just kind of looked the same, and I wanted to stand out and do something different, I guess.
And thank you for such a detailed answer. I appreciate that. I think that I don't have you ever talked about this in this much detail?
Yeah, a few times, yeah.
Yeah, you have. Okay, okay. Well,
But not on
I
this podcast.
not on this podcast. No, that's okay. No, I love hearing about it. That's so interesting. Like I love how spur of the moment it sounds like the decision was to pick up that stuff.
I think it was, I mean, it sounds like it was very impulsive, and it was, but I played the first show sans tongs, any costume. And I felt like so pedestrian. I felt so,
Mm,
and I was like, I don't know what it is that I need to do that I'll feel unique enough or different or stand out. Like I know I'm working hard at the songwriting part, and I'm trying to get better at the songwriting part. This is my thinking back in 2015, 16. But like I didn't know what there was something I was felt very unsatisfied and unfulfilled. And it was a eureka moment in that moment when I saw the wig store. I was like, oh, this is the ticket. I'm gonna adopt a bit of a look. And I mean, a lot of musicians wear wigs. A lot of musicians wear costumes.
oh yeah.
There's nothing groundbreaking about it. It's just
No.
what was my je ne sais quoi? What was going to be my little thing that lights the spark that lights the fire, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, the what I what I get from it, you're right. It's not like a crazy thing to do at all these days. Lots of people have a persona or name change or they dress a certain way when they're on stage or whatever. The what's interesting to me is that it's you've been successful. So many people who do that, we know everything about Lady Gaga, even though they go as Lady Gaga. You know what I mean? Um,
Right.
versus yeah, it's just interesting that you've still clung to not interesting, I guess I mean admirable actually, that you've clung to still sorts of anonymity, having some sort of a, you're closer now to your real self. You are just being yourself, but like for example, you still haven't shared, if I'm not, if I'm not mistaken, you still haven't shared your actual surname, if that's correct.
No, but could you imagine Lady Gaga? Like, what would you do if you were interviewing her? Like, should I call you Miss Gaga or just Lady? Like, but I mean, I guess art is like Arthur, Art, Artie. Like
Yeah.
that is my real,
Yes.
real name. And obviously David is David Bowie's real first name, but like,
Hmm.
uh, I don't know if he ever really legally changed his name to Bowie. I believe he kept it Jones because I think his
Yeah.
daughter's last name is Jones. But like, no one wants to call him. No one cares that his real name is Jones. They love the theatrics, the histrionics, the exaggeration of his personality. Like Bowie is like it's like I thought Jagger, Dagger, Bowie, Bowie knife. There's like something more sexy about it, and the sort of iconography of like the font, like the logoing of Bowie. I don't want to
Absolutely.
know it. I kind of almost like I almost want to unremember that his real last name is Jones. Like it's irrelevant to me. Like I don't really. It's like when Kiss stopped wearing the makeup, they got like less popular.
Yeah.
So
No,
there are
no,
people
no.
out there that really, really want to know, like, what is your, like, someone for the longest time thought my real first name was Renee. Like there's, it's so funny how obsessed people are with those details. Do you want my SIN number too, or like my bank card info? Like, why do
Well,
you care
that's
so much?
because there is this weird, even more than ever before, parasocial relationship that has developed out of social media. So I guess I'm bringing it up because I think it's so great that you haven't played into that by essentially giving into that. Uh, Despite that there now seems to be more than ever this demand for the actual reality, even though what you're saying is true. That's not actually what people want. People want this theatricality and whatever. But anyway,
Right.
it,
No,
I
and to be clear, I'm not saying you as in you, Alex, like you, like I mean the royal, like the societal you.
I
Just to be clear.
understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I gotcha. I gotcha. No, it's all good. I feels like that may that gig that you're explaining might be a candidate for the first question I'm going to ask, or first of the main four. But
Sure.
what's your favorite gig memory?
Of me performing.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, you know, Going into this, like I had an answer in the chamber, but I almost feel compelled to change it because I feel like in the Art Deco biopic, that would be like a very significant moment and would definitely stand out far, would soar far higher than the answer I was about to give you. But I'll give you both.
Ah,
Let's just use that as like our alt timeline answer. But
sure.
the answer I was going to give you, I mean, there's the maybe this is recency bias, but um, we've been playing with like a really big band. I've been playing with a really big band because when you start off, you've got very little, if any, money to play any shows. And so me plus three, like I was playing guitar. And since then, the lineup's changed. There's been a revolving cast of characters throughout the years. And now we've been performing as like a 7, 8, 9 piece. And it's really exhilarating to have like a
Ooh,
big
okay.
band feel. And so like earlier this year, we did some shows with Sam Roberts. And we did
Cool.
a hometown show here for me in Victoria at the Capitol Ballroom. And I think we had like yeah, we were like a 9 piece band that night, and it was so fun. It felt like band camp, and it was so we were really, I felt like we were really on top of our game. We'd just gotten enough tightness from tour, if you will, or the mini tour, and it was my favorite show.
That's your favorite. Okay. That sounds like a
Yeah.
great show. That sounds like a great show. Victoria, that's where my grandma lives, and that's where she's lived all her life. So I've spent a lot of time visiting her, and I adore it. I think it's a great city. Uh,
Cool.
that's
Um,
cool.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's awesome. We're I'm gonna maybe we can talk about this off here, but I'm curious to know about your travels here, and obviously if you're ever out here in Victoria in the at any point in the near future, hit me up.
Oh yeah, hell yeah, yeah. No, I want to get your opinion actually, maybe as well on like right now we can talk about it. Where do you like playing in Victoria, big and small? Like where are cool spots to see musicians?
The tough one. I mean, the biggest show I played here was, Rifflandia probably.
Okay.
There's like one club here called the Capitol Ballroom that's played there
Hmm.
a few times. That's like a four, five, 600 cap room. There's the Royal Theatre, the McPherson Playhouse, but honestly, one of the criticisms of Victoria, much like a Toronto or a Vancouver, is that the real estate, the cost of living, renting an apartment here is really, really, really expensive. So it's driven out a lot of the creatives because they just,
Yeah.
they can't afford to live here, unfortunately. Um, and it's something that, yeah, it really, with all the development going on, it'd be great. And there are people that are fighting the good fight on this front. It'd be great to see more venues, even smaller venues, like 200 cap rooms, 250.
Exactly.
That's, there's like Lucky Bar, I guess. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
like a few sort of like all ages spots that I'm not thinking about. But the venues have really been hit hard post pandemic. A lot of them are shut down and nothing's really come up to replace them. There's talks of
Uh
a few places to open up soon here, but yeah, I would really like to see that improve in the next 5 years, or else there is going to be zero music scene here, and that's not good.
this is just a thought off the top of my head. I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts. I like stand-up comedy a lot. And something that if they have enough money, they being stand-up comedians will do is they'll start their own uh venue. Would you
Mm,
ever do that if you had, let's just say you do, or if you ever had more than enough money to spend on it, if you decided you want to, like just as a project, would you want to take that on?
totally. I mean, if I always talk about this, like if I rub a lamp and a genie pops out, and the first wish is like, okay, I'm gonna win the lottery, and then now that I've won the lottery, I would love to open a little speakeasy style, like I won't call it like a bar or a lounge or a pub, but like in addition to yes, music venues, we need these places that are sort of like the spot where creatives go to like have a cocktail or eat some food that's like dark, moody, candlelit maybe, or like, I'm thinking of there's this place in Vancouver called the Narrow. It's like the perfect
Uh-huh.
spot where like musicians or artists go to like, post rehearsal or to have a meeting and just like scheme up the plans, dream up the big dreams. And
Yeah,
like,
are you basically describing like a modern version of like an 18th century salon where people can trade
yeah,
ideas? Yeah, I would love
totally.
that.
Yeah. I
We got to
love
bring
that.
those back.
And then like I know New York and the Lower East Side had a bunch of them. These places are not pretentious. These places are super open. Everyone's welcome. You can
Hmm.
go there at like 3 in the afternoon. Maybe there's a jukebox. Like there's this place called I think it's called International Bar. It's in New York City. I rented
Hmm.
an apartment like pretty much right upstairs when I started writing this new album. Had a piano in there, and I would go downstairs. This bar was open till like 4 a.m. It was like a cast of the most colorful characters and like day drinkers galore. And there's a jukebox, and it's just it's like unpretentious. It's the perfect spot to like go and talk about music. And like I
Yeah.
said, it's a place for creatives to hang out and linger and meet and cross pollinate. And those are as important, I would say, as music venues. And when those go away too, and like you don't need to go there and drink. You can go there and like maybe have some food or like have a
Yeah.
non-alcoholic. Like I get it. California sober, take a little edible and go hang out with your friends, whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, these watering holes, these little like meat spots are really important for creatives as well.
And seemingly even more scarce than venues are post 2024. Like I can't think of a single one right now. It's partially because I'm not as plugged into the scene as I'd like to be because I've moved out briefly, but in Toronto, I mean. But
Yeah,
it just seems like they're not. It's like Montreal seems like the kind of place that would have them, but I bet they don't even have that many of them. But yeah, you should absolutely. Basically, this is a roundabout way of me getting you to start one of those in Victoria.
Yeah,
A
I mean,
chapter. There will be a chapter in Victoria and a chapter in Toronto.
it's like you own the venue and then the musicians. It's like a little eco. It's like a little. It's like I'd have my studio,
Like a
and then I'd own.
co-op.
Yeah, I'd have the studio where we record the bands. I'd
Yes.
own the little like speakeasy, like 30, 40 seats tops, like maybe even less, like 20 to 30 seats, where they
Hmm.
go to like talk about the record and like rehearsals and and like plan and scheme and dream, and then the little 250 cap small bar where they would get their first gigs. It'd be like the deco, like farm system, if you will.
Bar deco.
Bar
Uh,
deco. Yeah.
yeah.
Comment
Uh,
below, what should I call each of these establishments?
that's okay. Good. We've concocted a plan to come up with something whenever I'm out in Victoria. Uh, what about worst gig memory?
Man, there's so there's so many. I mean, oh my God. I mean, this is like a rite of passage though, right? Like you play to no one for
Oh yeah.
so many gigs
And
because
and by the way, at starting out, why should they care? It's an unfortunate truth, but it's like even if you're talented, chances are you haven't quite honed it to be like the idea of asking somebody to spend their time to pay attention to your creative endeavor to me is inherently a risky thing.
oh, big time. And in a crowded, it's like when but I mean just to circle the wagons back, like why put on the feather boas and the peacock outfit and like be colorful and stand out. It's like that's kind of what I was faced with. There's this
Yes.
glut of indie rock dude guitar bands in Vancouver at the time, and I was just like, how am I gonna stand out? Well, I got to think of something here because
Yeah.
you can have like great songs and a great live show,
It
but
so doesn't matter.
like you play one show to like 20 of your friends, and then the next time like they might not even be able to come, even if
Yeah.
they have a great time, even if they have a great time. So it's like such a slow build. Then you build like enough of a little bit of an echo chamber in your own city that
Hmm.
you get the courage to venture outside, and that's where you start getting into like this like danger zone of like, wow, if I thought people barely cared in my city, when you go to Boise, Idaho on a Tuesday night, no one gives a fuck. Like I played
Yes.
to like four people, and thank God, like one of them was like the bar manager, and one of them was the sound guy. Like there were like two people that came in there, and bless their hearts, they were wearing Art Deco merch. Like they
Oh
were
hell
the
yeah.
only two fans, and like they were so apologetic, and they like I think three or four of their other friends showed up by the end of the gig, and they all bought like a bunch of merch each, and it was like one of those things where it was a very invaluable lesson that I learned that night. Very valuable lesson. Did I just say invaluable? It was invaluable to me, and it was
Yes.
a valuable lesson in that it's like those shows. Here I am putting an hour and a half of makeup on at a hotel, lugging the gear in, uphill both ways in the snow. And wink, wink, obviously not. But the hour and a half of makeup, the effort that I put in, and paying my guys, like everybody in the band gets paid regardless of what I make that night. And
Good,
so it was
good.
like such a huge loss on time, on money, on everything. And I was so bummed out. I'm like, I'm gonna implode on stage. Like, who fucking cares? What am I doing here? I'm like on the verge of like a meltdown. But
Hmm.
you're not playing for the people that aren't there, that didn't show up, that don't care. You're playing for the two people in the room, or you're playing for the sound guy, or maybe how about just play for each other. And it's a character building exercise where you're like, you never know who's going to be in the room. So regardless of whether there's one person there or 1,000 people there, you really, it's incumbent upon you to like find that gear, find that nugget of inspiration, pull up your socks, and just get to work and like put on a show. And we did that night. I did that night, and I'm glad I did, because the 2 to 6 people that ended up being there are still fans. They still
Yeah,
follow.
right.
They become advocates, and that is an avatar for like 100 shows I've played in the last 10 years, where it's an empty basement, it's an empty bar. And like, sometimes my band will be like, look, Art, like we're having a good time. Like there might only be 10, 20 people here, but like they're all here to see you and to see us. Like, don't self-destruct on us. Like find that joy and go out there and put on a good show. And yeah, so I can name several shows, but I'll use that Boise, Idaho gig at Neurolux. I don't know, it was like 2019 maybe, as like the sort of like example.
What strikes me about that is your bandmates coming to your aid in that way. It seems like you have a very nice relationship to your bandmates.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the rhythm section that has backed me up for like 5 years now in several albums. Malcolm Holt on drums and Pascal Levasseur on bass. I call them the West Coast Boogie Machine because they're just, I mean, those boys can boogie. They take my like janky demos and my poorly played bass lines to my drum machines, and they spring them to life. So, the pop and lock that you hear on my singles,
Yes.
it comes from like a very arrhythmic place in my heart, and those guys actually translated into like real grooves. So yeah,
Well,
props to them.
it sounds great. That's one of the most like first impression that creates what the hell am I trying to say here? That comes out in the first impression the first time you hear your music, in my opinion, the rhythm section. Like
Totally.
as well as obviously your own songwriting artistry, but just if we're talking only about musically or the arrangement, I find that to be the case. Like I'm thinking about the rhythm section regularly. Uh well,
Hmm.
that doesn't sound like too bad of obviously it is a worse gig. Lots of other people on this podcast have given similar answers about playing to no one or just the sound person and the bartender. But yours is a bit of a cut above, as in not as bad, it seems like, because I think it's a really nice heartwarming surprise that you showed up and the two people who were there were wearing your t-shirt. That's an extra step that you don't quite hear about.
Yeah, and I thank you. And like, I think at the time in that era, I was just so determined and so demoralized at the same time. Like, one, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps
Yeah.
forward, 10 steps back. Like it was just such this. You hear so much no in the industry. Like, no, I won't cover your band. No, I won't review your album. No, I won't work with you. No, you won't play my festival. No, you can't support my other artists. No, 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 I won't sign you. No, I won't play on your record. No, I won't spin your single on radio. Like
Keep
it's
going.
I mean, it's fuck, right? It's just this cascading wall of
Yes.
no's, and
Yeah.
you
Wow.
really have to have resolve. You got to be really steely, and you got to be like really determined to make any anything work in showbiz and the music industry. It's like an actor. Like my sister's an actor. How many times she worked tirelessly on an audition, went through the whole process of like, first audition, second audition. Now you're going to get like flown down to LA. It's between you and one other person. This role will change your life. And then it's a no. And it's like
Yeah.
you get heartbroken over and fucking over again in this biz. More so, in addition to regular, normal human existence, like, no, I won't go on a date with you, or no, this isn't working out, or no, I won't give you that loan, or no, you won't get accepted to this job or this school that you really want to get into. So I feel like when I put a lot of work into it, and I'm like, every gig at that era of my career was like so hopeful and so promising, like, putting on the makeup and setting up the merch table, and like, you're just, the doors are now open, we're on in half an hour, and no one fucking gives a fuck.
The panic.
The panic and just like the benign indifference of the universe, just the silence. And it's
Yes.
just like, I think about that, and it's like, it just felt so heartbreaking in the moment, but I'm glad to have gone through all that. And I mean, at that point, I was already in my early 30s. Like, I'd already gone through 15, 10 years of that in other people's bands playing in Vancouver. So the amount of struggle and spinning my tires, like if you're a kid just starting out, like now you can get lucky with a TikTok and go viral before you even played one show. and I don't hate on the younger generation for having access to those opportunities. Like I'm kind of like I'm glad you don't have to waste thousands of hours and dollars to like grind away at this like unsuccessful attempt after unsuccessful attempt. Like you
Yes,
should have some character built along the way, and you need to go through those experiences. But enough is enough at some point, right?
absolutely. Very well said. Very, very well said. I want to I'm gonna I'm gonna try and isolate your no rant, and I'm gonna use that as a soundbite for episodes coming forward. Just throw
Nice.
that on like a shock DJ. Um, that was great. Well, I feel like I usually try and do more of like a wandering conversation as opposed to like bang 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 with these four questions. But we talked about so much in the first half. I feel like I can just move forward. So let's talk about your music specifically that's available now with regard to these questions. So what do you think is the best song that you've released publicly to date?
I would, yeah, I would say Serene Demon is my most,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, recency bias. It's like
Sure.
the title track. It's the,
It's fantastic. I
thank
like it.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was, I was trying to, I would say it's my most proudest work. It's definitely a grower, not a shower. It's a journey song, but it's like journey as in like, you're going on a trip, not journey the band.
Yes.
Um, but I feel like with that song, I set out with a goal and I accomplished the goal. And that there's something very satisfying as a songwriter when you're like, it turned out exactly the way that I hoped it would, exactly the way that it fucking sounded in my head when I was like dreaming it up. And like, there's this performance by Eric Carmen who
Mm-hmm.
wrote All by Myself, and he like interpolates like Rachmaninoff in the middle. And of course, if you've been listening to this point, I have an affinity for classical composers of the Romance era. And
Yes.
there's this performance on this show called The Midnight Special, which is like a really cool live performance 70s TV series that went
I
on.
love that show. Love that show.
Yeah, they've just actually been like digging into the archives and digitizing them, and they've set up a YouTube.
Yeah, it's all on YouTube.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
incredible. So you can watch the Eric Carmen one. This fucking guy, incredible, like interpolates this like classical solo into All by Myself. And it's if you hear that song, there's definitely some of that DNA that I borrowed from in the composition of Serene Demon,
Yeah.
that sort of like lilting power ballady thing, but not in
Yeah.
like, yeah. And then there's this triptych of songs on David Bowie's Diamond Dogs album, Sweet Thing Candidate, Sweet Thing, where it's like really jazzy and like it's amorphous. And I'm really obsessed with songs that don't follow that verse, chorus, bridge,
Hmm.
outro kind of pop structure. And that song, that triptych, that trio of songs, they almost feel like it's like a play, like this, like you're watching the soundtrack to a movie, or like this really like dark noir sort of like musical theater
Hmm.
piece. And I think he was also trying to write the soundtrack to the movie 1984, but the estate of Orwell didn't want it to ever go out. So like he's kind of stuck with these songs that sounded, and it kind of makes sense because that song and a lot of the songs on the album are very dystopian in nature.
Yeah, that does make sense.
So I was borrowing a bit from that. I was borrowing from like Harry Nilsson again, like all by not all by yeah, oh Without You, which I think is a
Yeah.
cover of Badfinger, but I love his version more. And Roy Orbison would write in like these crazy structures, like like A, B, C, D, E, F. Like, where's the chorus here? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It's like amorphous and it flows and it's off tempo. So like all of these elements thrown into a blender was like sort of the sonic blueprint of Serene Demon. And I just chipped away at it, and so I'm very proud of that song.
Did you record it in Victoria or in Toronto or where?
So I demoed it at my house. I wrote it on the piano and I laid everything down, the strings, the horns, everything. I composed everything here over the course of a couple months, and then I brought the demo to the West Coast Boogie Machine and Pascal and Malcolm. They're very faithful to the demo. They just um, again, one of the funny quirks of me and my arrhythmic nature is that I thought the song was in 3/4 time. It's actually in 4/4 time. So my click track needed to be transposed, and Malcolm had to pull some ingenious algebra to
Yeah.
translate it to 4/4. So when we recorded it at Hipposonic Studios, we brought in real string players, real horn players. They took my MIDI files and they made charts out of it and played it almost like faithfully. All
Wow.
the cellos and violins and violas and trumpets and trombones, like everything in there was pretty pretty faithful to the demo. And the song starts at like 92 BPMs, and by the end, it's like at 140. Like it speeds up very gradually, as if you're like putting a frog in a pot of water and boiling it up, which was all deliberate. Um, yeah, it was
That's
recorded all over the place, but like mainly at Hipposonic and in Victoria at a place called the Hive Studios with like a longtime engineer that I worked with, Colin Stewart.
cool. It must feel like a dream to go from being a music fan, listening to the kinds of music you like when you're younger, to now going and having actual organic uh, you know, brass musicians play on your record. That must be crazy. It would be
Oh,
to me. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's thank God for for a guy who is just totally obsessed with sounds of yesteryear, as evidenced by the music I released and the recording techniques that I employ. I love recording to 2-inch tape. I've got a reel-to-reel 4-track tape machine here. I always bounce stems through it. I'm always using tape and as much analog hardware as possible. But I'm not a
Hmm.
Luddite. Like I definitely embrace the modernity of technology with respect to recording and demoing. And for instance, like Logic Pro, like I'm a Logic Pro
Yeah.
guy. That's my DAW for all you
Same.
music. Yeah. And, the string program and the horn program in there, if it weren't for those, like I would be so lost. Like I would have no idea.
1000%. I use the exact same things.
Exactly. And so again, like talking about the Beach Boys and like the Wrecking Crew, another great documentary about the Wrecking Crew, like this group of musicians that backed up and like were the Pet Sounds recording band that
Yeah.
Phil Spector and Brian Wilson used. And like back then, it just blows my mind. Like as a writer for him, completely deaf in one ear too, by the way, Brian Wilson, and he's like hearing all these melodies and he's structuring, he's kind of like mapping them out on the piano, and then he's like parlaying them to this group of musicians called the Wrecking Crew, and they're all like there's cellists and like multiple piano players and horn players, and you've got like Carol Kay on bass and stuff. Like they're just total geniuses, and
Yeah.
it's just like they're yes anding the bit in the most perfect way, but like they're using like all just ingenuity and in the moment and charts, and they're like he's having to rely on players to like sort of like parlay the idea back to him so he can hear it. And I
Yes.
what a luxury it is being the introvert that I am, that in the comfort of my own home I can have access to like a little bit of a Wrecking Crew in the box, if you will. And it allows me to like, and allows anybody at home who's thinking about like, I want to start using sounds like strings and horns in my compositions, but like, where do I find these players? It's like, you don't need to think that far in the future. Just use the tools, use Logic, use any software program that you have. If you can play keyboards, you can play the horns on the keyboard and learn, the range of these instruments and how to layer them up. And it's, I've chipped away at it. I'm not, uh, don't fancy myself like a orchestral composer, but like I've definitely laundered my ideas through these programs, and I've been able to build out a little bit of like a palette for myself, and bouncing ideas off of the real players with respect to these demos has also taught me like the limitations and like the blind spots of my compositions. And having a real horn player kind of embellish and add a little bit of like a human
Hmm.
flair has been really rewarding. But yeah, just that whole using different sounds other than just keyboard, guitar, and bass and drums with rock music much like the 60s and 70s did, has been really expanding my sonic palette with respect to like my compositions, and it's been really rewarding to see them come to life on this new album.
Good. Good. Well said, especially about the idea of just to artists out there or people who want to be artists, just get started with the Logic or whatever DAW built-in stuff. Like you don't need it is a luxury, like you're saying, a luxury that you get to really enjoy and use to emphasize your musical ideas. But that's yeah. People should just start, you know?
Start,
Um,
yeah, exactly, and don't be intimidated
intimidated.
like to use an instrument that is going to require you to like. I mean, when I've been using strings since Day Fevers, and back then I would go on like musicians wanted. I would search
Right.
violinist Vancouver, but I would ask friends. Like it's hard to find those kind of tertiary instruments. You're getting into like the jazz world, the R&B world, the big band world, the
Yeah.
Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, like and it's like a whole other universe, and it was exhilarating, and intimidating beyond belief. But yeah, just keep chipping away at it. If you hear that sound in your head, don't be afraid to use it.
Exactly. Well, it sounds like that single that you just chose for best song is sort of emblematic of what you're doing. It's like you just said, it's you actually nailed the sound that was in your head and got it down so we can all hear it. What I guess maybe a way to lead into the titular worst song of yours might be a way maybe we can look at it that way. Like what is the least Art Deco song in your catalog? What do you least relate? What do you least relate to now?
Um, it's hard to kill your babies,
I
but
know.
sometimes you ought to. No, but there is one song in particular that stands out. As I take a big sip of my water here,
Yeah,
just
dramatic sip.
yakking up a storm, hey.
I know.
Yeah, I can be quite loquacious, Al.
That's good for
Uh,
podcasting. I'm more than happy with, I'm very happy with how this has gone personally.
there's probably a good, cohesive, coherent, focused 20 minutes in all of this rambling, and I would not be mad if it was edited to that. But my worst song is, and I hope this isn't a cop out, but I've re-recorded two songs in my catalog. Um, one album that I referred to earlier called Day Fevers that is really
Hmm.
only available. It's not on DSPs, it's on vinyl. There's a song on that called Nothing Ever Changes, and I re-recorded it. It's slightly different key, slightly different arrangement. I have it on in standard definition. You can hear Nothing Ever Changes. But back in the day, it was more almost country sounding. It was like acoustic
Uh,
guitar. It was a bit glammier. And that version, I'm the re-recording of Nothing Ever Changes. I'm stoked on. Like it exists. It's a thing. I kind of like both versions. Some people, it's usually the version people hear the first
hmm.
that they tend to like. My worst song is another re-record, a song that is also on Day Fevers that was re-recorded in 2019 and released on paper bag as just a one-off digital single, and it's called "I'll Never Give You Up." And
Okay.
the reason why it's my worst is because I should have never re-recorded it in the first place. But my reasoning behind it was like, I'm going on tour. Day Fevers, um, Trespasser has been out for a
Hmm.
while. It'd be good to release something. I've released a few cover songs. We've been playing "I'll Never Give You Up" live. It's kind of a fan favorite. No one can find it anywhere. Why don't we re-record it with live drums, and I'll redo it from the ground up, and maybe I can find some of the original stems from the uh, album version. So I did. My intentions were pure, but in hindsight, there's just so many things wrong with that re-recording. Not to throw, it's like all my fault. I mean, no,
Yeah.
everybody that mixed it, like no shade to anyone, like the mastering, the mixing, everything's it's me. It's the way I sing it. It's the arrangement. Like it's just wrong. It just doesn't. I don't play it live anymore. I kind of cringe. Like I can't. It was like in my top five Spotify songs, and I was
Yeah.
like, can we just like kick this thing down to like the basement? Like I'm almost embarrassed that someone would come across my music and hear that within the first 5 songs. It
Oh,
was,
wow.
it was like synced, used in this Netflix show called You.
Yes.
And so I think that's
I
the
watched
reason.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that it's like buried in the background of one of the episodes.
Cool.
You blink and you'll miss it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I think that's why it's had such a persistence in my top five. But
Yes.
yeah, maybe not anymore. I think it's been knocked down, thankfully. Maybe
Well,
one day we'll
oh,
release Day Fevers and people can hear and judge for themselves which version they like better. But yeah, the original one that Jason produced, and it sounds a lot more Depeche Mode, a lot more cold wave, synth wave. It
yeah.
really honors the sort of composition versus a lively sort of new orderly kind of rehash of it.
Well, I appreciate the answer. I don't think that's a cop out. I think that's a solid answer. You re-released your own song or remade and re-released your own song. That can be an answer. Uh I'm wondering if you have anything else you wanted to talk about. We're nearing the end. Like, do you have anything you want to promote? Obviously the new album is coming up soon, but
Yeah, I mean, if you like vinyl or CDs, good old fashioned CDs, you can go to the Paper Bag website, the web stores. We've got this like special edition, like a white label copy. It's like white vinyl, white OB strip. It comes
cool.
with like a little tchotchke, if you will, like a little hidden gem. I don't want to reveal too much, but
No, no. Just tease.
you can kind of see it if you look at the photo. It's pinned on my Instagram, and if you scroll
Oh.
in, you'll see zoom in, you'll see the vinyl, you'll see the kind of like the packaging, and there's a little trinket that we've stuffed into the package, and it's only available for the white label copy. I think there's only a couple hundred pressed. 100 have been earmarked for pre-sales. So get in. There might not even be any left by the time this airs, but you're going to want to get your hands on the white label limited edition run of Serene Demon.
And it's
Um,
all on paper bag, right?
yeah, it's on Paperback Records, ships worldwide. Pre-sales are open on their website. You can link through on my Instagram. After that sells out, there's the black version, good old fashioned black vinyl, which I also dig. I think we've gotten like I think we hit peak like um colored vinyl, polka dot vinyl, pink vinyl, red vinyl. Like I kind of want black vinyl or
The
white vinyl.
classic.
The
Yeah, yeah, I
classic.
gotcha. I like that. Also, it suits the new look that you're going with, in my opinion, which is, you know, a lot of the
A lot
time
of
you're wearing a suit, which is white and black.
Yeah, a lot of suits, a lot of black and white photography, a lot of film noir references, a lot of cinematic
Yeah,
references in the album. So yeah,
exactly.
um, in terms of like shows and stuff, I don't know when this airs, but um,
This will air the first Monday in December, which is like the second maybe or something like that.
oh, well, there's a show that's getting announced tomorrow on December 3rd
Oh.
for for anyone that's in the Vancouver area. Anybody that lives outside of the Vancouver area, which is probably a lot of your listeners, keep an eye on artdecomusic.ca or my Instagram for any tour updates. There will be a lot of dates to announce in the coming weeks.
Cool. Well, Art, thank you so much for coming on. I thought this was a really great conversation. We went everywhere. We went lots of places. Uh, and so what we do at the end is just I have you restate your name, and the worst song choice.
My name is Art Deco, and my worst song is "I'll Never Give You Up," the re-recording.
Days go by, dancing in my memories. Dim the lights, words escape my melodies. It's bringing me down. on the